As a long-running game, Dragon Ball Legends has added and removed a lot of different mechanics over the courses of the years. And today we're going to talk about some of the worst changes that Dragon Ball Legends has ever made to their game. I want you guys to comment down below, what do you think are 3 of the worst changes they've ever made? And I'm going to be giving you guys some of my ideas for today. Now, like I said, I thought about it for a while and I was like, I made a little list here, but I was like, I'm sure there are going to be things that I am going to be forgetting or things that I was mad about at a certain time point. Again, long lifespan of the game, 5.5 years thus far, and we're still going strong. I'm sure there are things that I thought about at a time and, I should be mad about in this video or should talk about in this video, but I'm going to inevitably forget. So again, you guys can also help jog my memory because there's no way for nothing. I just forget everything. You guys can help by posting that stuff down below. So again, join in as well, and let's hop right in. Now, I'm sure this is going to happen with several of the ones that I have on this list, where people are going to say, hey, I like that change, or that was a good change, I guess it kind of just depends, right? Because I myself can also be a little bit like jaded with some of this stuff. So I'm going to start off with the first one, and this one is one that's pretty controversial. Red Stars. The limit break to add in the Red Star system to the game was an interesting change for sure. I looked it up quickly on Google, and it was added just about 4 years ago, just over 4 years ago. So it looks like, from December 2019, things like that. And then there are other videos in that time period. So that was when it was first kind of talked about. And to give you a brief rundown on this, characters used to only have the yellow stars, and they would max out there. Now, when they added the Red Star system, if I recall correctly, if you had a character at 7 yellow, they got ported over to 7 red. And if you had them at any other levels in between, like if you had them below 7, then they would go to most likely, right here or something like that. So the Z power system, I said all that to say, I don't think the Z power system really changed. But the way that they tried to spin this is that when they kind of talked about it initially, and I had this effect as well, I had this thought process as well initially. The way that they tried to spin this was that it was a good thing for everybody. And why is because all of the characters in the game are essentially getting a stat bonus. I think it's like 5% every other star level, right? That allowed them to basically pad out the stats and add more stat value to characters. So my initial thing was I remember I would say oh, and this, it's true, but in 4-year hindsight, it's maybe a little bit more of the case that it's kind of broken, right? But I would say your free-to-play characters, at the time it was Fury Broly, things like that, they're going to be much better because they're going to get access to these stat gains that, they needed a rework or things like that, but they're going to get access to increased stats that would help them a lot. So that's one thing I would say, and that's the way that they kind of spun it, and I had a lot of fun with it at first. But, really what it is when you boil it down, and this was true then, right? It's true then, and we talked about it as well. But when you boil it down, it just is a incentive for you to go harder on the banners. Because back then, the mantra was get a character, 5-star? Because 5-star was when they would get that second Z, Z ability, right? And then they would get the last one at 7. I think you needed more Z power in between each upgrade, right? But it added a system where you felt the immediate effects more, and there was more value for those in-between copies, because before, like I said, there was such a big difference, if I'm remembering properly anyway, between the star upgrades that you may or may not have really felt that difference. You'd have to pull a character numerous times, versus with the way it is currently, most of the time you only need 1 copy of the character, especially with other incentives that are good, by the way, where they've done double Z power and sometimes triple Z power, things like that, to where you can kind of shoot through the star rankings if you're pulling consistently enough on characters or on banners. And also there's a trickle-down effect where if you pull these characters in the future, you are going to ultimately get them to those red star levels. And, as a whole by itself, that mechanic, has good merits and bad merits to it. Because at the end of the day, like I said, it does incentivize pulling for the characters. Now, this next one, I don't know that I'm going to edit and make any changes because it's kind of easy to see and kind of do and talk about. Actually, let's see if I can pull it up here really quick. It's actually kind of tricky finding some things because we call things a certain way and then the terminology actually in game is different. So this is called, I guess, the tier system, but I'm talking about the boost system here. It's another change that is not a bad one. Conceptually anyway, it's not a bad one, but there are issues with this. First and foremost, this right here, a Zenkai character, like, so let me just break this chart down. So the featured characters, so when you log in and you go to PvP, there's always been characters that were featured characters, right? They would before this was added, they would just have, like, I believe increased RP gain or whatever it is, but there was reason to use them. But now they get extra stat increases, inflicted damage, 15% double defenses, and then throughout these other tiers, Z, S, A, B, and C, they have categorized every other character in the game in some of these other tiers. And what happens is, Tier Z is the least used characters by some other metrics, because they have metrics that show them which characters are getting a lot of play, which is funny because it oftentimes doesn't correlate to what we think is the case, because when we talk about it, we talk about top-end meta, things like that, but then there are players all through the tiers that are using these characters, right? So there's other metrics that they are seeing and using. But anyway, least used characters are going to be here, and they're getting 40%, 35 double defenses, and if they're a Zenkai, they're getting 10%. If there were a featured Zenkai, they were getting 8% damage instead of, 40, right? And then it trickles down as the units become more common, all the way down to tier B, which are like semi-common characters you might use. They're getting 15 and 10 and 3% bonus if they're a Zenkai. And then tier C, these are the cream of the crop, like Ultra UI Goku characters that are already super good and definitely don't need an added bonus. And they're in here and they're not getting anything, whether they're a Zenkai or not. So this is it on the surface, not a bad system. And where this one falls flat is in two areas. First and foremost, I think these bonuses are not enough. Because at the end of the day, the characters don't need 20%, 30%, even 40% extra damage. And by the way, if a character is in Z tier, this 40% really doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter on any of these groups, but particularly for like the Z tiers, because that means they're really bad. Anyway, the point is that these characters need new passives, and they finally realized this when they started producing equips that had passives in them. And they realized that the stat gain just isn't enough. It doesn't, like, could you imagine how they did Beerus? Like, Beerus was the first, I believe, LF equipment. I'm gonna pull it up here. And could you imagine if back then, when they tried to make Beerus' equip to save him, right? All the way back then, instead of giving him this stuff, which was good, especially for his time. This was insane seeing this, by the way. It was insane. But anyway, instead of trying to do this, if they just gave him a new passive and then all this stuff on top of it like they would today, never mind the higher bonuses up to 60 and 90% damage and stuff like that. This doesn't even have damage inflicted, by the way. Anyway, so like, could you imagine if they had done that all along? Things would have been a little different. So the point is that they kind of realized that somewhere along the way. And so all that means is that these old characters aren't doing anything with it. This doesn't, because they just don't have the abilities. They don't have the flat damage cut. They don't have arts powered debuffs. They don't have all these other things. So the system kind of doesn't really do much. But where this system does have an impact, is featured by itself. If you were to strip featured off of this list and just say tier Z through C are the only ones in the game, this wouldn't be in my video. The featured one, I think, is a major problem. Now, on the surface, featured isn't a problem either, because at first look, it's typically just going to be characters that they are returning to the season, being featured characters due to some relevance with whatever campaign is going on or things like that. There's nothing wrong with that, and you actually get more value out of this because they're not going to be the bargain bin, bottom of the barrel characters that are just terrible most of the time. They're going to be a recently Zenkai character, things like that. It's also, however, really damaging. Why? Because it's misleading. What they decided to do with this was they decided to put brand new characters in featured tier. And never mind the fact that they sit in featured tier for like, what, 2 to 3 months? Gohan, Ultimate Gohan Beast, I think, just came out of featured. And he came out December? like it's February now. Dude, it's been like legit at least 2 months. So that's kind of what they do. They do that with these characters. And so all of a sudden, this is a multi-layered thing, a multi-layered problem. Featured does this thing where the characters are better than you would think that they are because they're starting off getting a phantom buff of 20% and 15, right? That's a phantom buff that they would not have outside of PvP, or well, it doesn't really matter if it's outside because PvE content also has crazy bonuses for the new characters too, by the way. But regardless, though, it's a phantom buff, because what's going to happen is people are going to come across that Gohan. He's going to just do just a smidge more damage. All the characters that are brand new, by the way, going to do just a smidge more damage, tank just a little bit better than they would normally. And so they leave them also in the feature system just long enough for that FOMO to kick your butt, because they're hoping that those characters look amazing because of two reasons. They want the player that summoned for them to get more value out of them, which is not really a problem, right? But they also want that player getting the value out of them to take them and use them in every match, and for you, the player that didn't pull that character, to get just stomped by them and get FOMO, fear of missing out, and then hit that banner repeatedly until you get said character and can repeat the process with another player. This is very psychological stuff what they're doing here. So again, on the surface, it doesn't look like a problem. But we could get into a whole bunch of psychological stuff that not just Dragon Ball Legends, but the entire gacha gaming scene does, because that's a whole different thing. But there's a lot of psychological stuff happening here. But this one I think is a huge mistake because of that. And then also it's another layer too. Typically characters, when they release on banners that are brand new, they don't come back for 4 to 6 months. There are outliers every now and again where the character doesn't come back for longer than that, but most of the time it's 4 to 6 months. And so what happens is, by the time they return, they've now been in a position where they're probably power crept. Like, for example, when they release, they're like top 5 character, just on average, probably at this point, because power creep is so crazy, on average. And then when they come back, they're maybe top 20, top 15, something like that. Still a good character you can use. But they're also not going to be in the boost system anymore. So all of a sudden, you're getting a very watered down version because the climate has changed around the character and they're not getting boosted either. So you're getting a very watered down version. So that's the bonus, the bonus that they grant to players that are going to summon for characters brand new. And again, I don't think that that part of it is a problem. I just think that this system in and of itself is super misleading and predatory. But again, we can get into a lot of that exact same thing with gachas in general. Like, I could talk about the featured system and its flaws for another 10 minutes, but I'm not going to. All right. I actually forgot my next point. I need to think about this. What was my next point, dude? It was red stars and featured system. Well, okay, I got to figure this out. I totally forgot it because I had it. I got really upset about the featured system just now. I didn't intend to go this long. Oh, this was the next one. Zenkai Awakening. Zenkais are funny, man. So this is a system. I don't know if they ever truly mastered this. First and foremost, this is a system that is there to buff old characters. That is the root cause of this system and the reason it is in the game. It was added in 2019, December 2019. These were the original 3 Zenkais. They all came out at the same time. So in order to do this, and because I'm going to run long with this will be our last point. Remember, like the video, subscribe, post yours down below, because there's a lot more. This will be the last one. And I just want to also say that the concept of Zenkai buffing old characters, I have no problem with. I have absolutely no problem with it. You could also argue that maybe unique equipments should be on this list. I wouldn't probably put them, but you can maybe argue it. It's it's a similar concept, though. Let's just go down a little bit of memory lane here. So they added the system on the heels of balance changes. I don't have the tab open for balance changes. Let me see if I can pull it up here in the meantime. But balance changes were where they basically did balance change. Where they basically did the same thing, but at no cost to the player. So if you weren't playing when this was implemented, I don't know if they talk about it here, but if you weren't playing when this was implemented, this came with a steep cost, by the way. So, okay, so here is the graph for the benefits. They were going through, because this was its first one, right? So there's multiple benefits. You get all the extra stat bonuses, right? You also get those extra passives, right? Because they realized passives are the new wave, but they also added Zenkai abilities. And here's this too, sleeves, that's cool, whatever. This page got revised 3 times apparently. It doesn't show the cost really. Okay, So let me just go down there. So Zenkais were not free to play. First and foremost, they had a 7-star requirement. So if you wanted a Zenkai character, you needed to have the character at least at 7 stars, which was much harder to do, granted, in Old Legends. In Old Legends, we didn't have 1200 Z-powered banners. We didn't have the things that we have nowadays, to where it's easier to get, especially older characters, limit broken. If you summon every so often, it's much easier. Like, you can realistically save and summon on, 4 or 5 banners a year for the celebrations or whatever, and mostly get all the old characters up to probably 7-star. And then if you can't get them naturally, we also didn't really have multi-Z power. If we did, it certainly wasn't accessible as it is today. So that in and of itself is one thing. But they added in those resources to do the boost pages and all that stuff. So this was just a flat out expensive, hard to do process. Also, speaking of expensive, it cost 21,000 Chrono Crystals on average to get these characters Zenkai 7, okay? That's what it cost. There was no other method to getting your character Zenkai awoken but to do the summons. It cost 21,000 Chrono Crystals, again, on average. Some people a little bit more, a little bit less, to get your character Zenkai awoken. Now, the trade-off is that these are terrible Zenkais now. Obviously, it came out 2019. What do you expect? But at the time, they were so far and away better than everything else in the game. It was disgusting because no other character had access to a Zenkai ability. No other character had access to the extra boost panels. No other character had access to extra that might enter stat, but the extra passives. No other character had this stuff. So there were very few characters that could compete in the environment that these characters created. And so these characters come out, get a Zenkai, and they're the only characters with the Zenkai. And actually, if I recall correctly, didn't their banners actually wind up leaving for a long time, like months? So it was, you get them then, and then they leave 4 months, and then they come back with a few more Zenkais, and they do this process a little bit. What was the next batch? Was it like Super Saiyan Gohan, Super Saiyan 2 Gohan? I mean, a few other ones that were in this time period. And Zenkais were just dominating. Dude, Final Form Cooler, the blue one, when he got a Zenkai, oh my god, bro. These were the best characters in the game. So what they effectively did was they found a way to turn something that is mostly free in pretty much any other game you play and make it extremely pay to win by not only having a 7-star requirement on your characters. And if I recall correctly, this was before the by the way, was this before the implementation of the red stars? It wasn't, right? It looks like they got added at just about the same time. Okay, because I was gonna say, that's kind of weird. I feel like they were added, I feel like red was, I have to go back and look at it. But it looks like they might have been added around the same time. I'm not gonna double check that right now. But anyway, they had the 7-star requirement regardless. They also had the 21 Chrono Crystals. So it was super expensive and not very easy to do, not accessible. For example, I only did Super Saiyan Goku. I very well may be the originator of Zenkai buffing because I got a lot of value out of the Goku. I did a lot of videos when no one else was really doing them, when no one else could do them. Again, that's why I say I might be the originator of that idea / concept / video type where people do a bunch of Zenkai buffs because I had the Goku. And for example, I didn't know anyone that had Broly, but he was really good when I ran into him every now and again. And I know Goresh had Beerus. This was before my boy Goresh went crazy whale mode. And this is also before his channel really took off. But nonetheless, I got a lot of value out of the Goku. But again, it was super exclusive stuff, and they dominated the game. So you fast forward a bit, and we get to, the release of Super Saiyan Trunks, the Super Saiyan 2 or Super Saiyan 1 red Super Trunks. Not Super Trunks, excuse me, Future Trunks. By the way, here's the balance changes. So again, this was a free thing that they did. They just went in and changed characters. And if you were to equate this to Dokkan, like a lot of people do, or just any other game, they just take your characters and just change them. Look, before and after adjustment, Hercule's special skill destroys all your enemies, and then they added the key stuff to it. They would go in and just change these characters. They even changed Z abilities, by the way. Look at Turles' Z ability. Before adjustment was 25, changed to 28. It's not a huge deal. But they added tags into some of these Z abilities for these characters. green regen. Oh, Piccolo didn't originally have regen on his Z ability. It was just green, but they added regeneration to it. Pan, I believe, did not have Sun Family, but they added Sun Family to it. Yeah, it was just female warrior. They added Sun Family to it on her balance change. Like, that's, by the way, they don't do that with Zenkais. For whatever reason, they decided they don't want to change any Z abilities in Zenkais. I don't know why, but this is that concept before it existed in a paid manner. So like I said, they found a way to make it super non-player friendly. You fast forward until that Super Saiyan Trunks comes out around that time, and they decided that because boy oh boy did Zenkais destroy the game. Zenkais lineup destroying the game with like a few releases like Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, 18, things like that. So they decided that they wanted to make it cheaper and more accessible. So they found a way to produce another banner type where the Zenkai banners stopped being 21,000 on average, but they flipped to being like 6,000 or 7,000 on average because they added those higher drops in there to weight it down. But you could get like 1,000 Z power on the drop and stuff like that. And that's still the same system we have now, except on the margins they've changed it because now they have things like the gauntlet and ways to get Z power in a free manner, because Zenkais were not free. That's the point. You couldn't exchange for it. You still have you have missions and stuff now to where in 2 weeks you can get any Zenkai for free if you just wait, right? As long as you got that 7 stars. But you can do it. Before, the point is, back then you could. So that in and of itself, I think they've hit a nice balance because you can wait 2 weeks. So I said I don't know if they ever mastered it. I think I hit a nice balance with that. But just the concept of this and the way it was dominant and then game-breaking dominant, like with like Gohan and stuff like that. And then they realized that people were doing this thing with Zenkais where it's like, I can just run my Zenkais. I don't need to summon for your new LFs. I don't need to do this and that. Yeah, I'll still summon if I like the character. And yeah, every now and again there's a character that's strong enough to where they can exist in this Zenkai meta, but I don't have to do anything. And so what they do after that is they massively drop the power scale on Zenkais, making each requisite Zenkai worse than the last batch would have been, than the heyday characters would have been relative to the rest of the field. And they started making LF characters that are insane at like 2 stars, right? At 2 stars, they're better than these Zenkai characters coming out nowadays. And so they found a way to reclaim that because it was, again, money what's the word? Money, I want to say like thrilled or themed. What's the word? It's a word that starts with a T. Damn it. But the goal of it was basically to make people spend more, because people stop buying their new characters, which again makes sense. But it all circles back to Zenkai, right? So I have no problem with the concept of buffing the characters, but with the hindsight we have of 5 years or whatever it is, I just wish they just kept doing that. And also, inherently, Zenkais have a flaw. You know what that flaw is? Is that you can't do it again. Until you can, by the way. I've been saying for a while, like years, that we need Zenkai 2 already. Like they need to find a way to buff these characters again. Or they should do balance changes exclusively for Zenkais at this point. Now, here's the funny thing. They have taken a hard stance against doing balance changes for years. Since this was introduced, they took a hard stance. In all of their things that they published, they said, we're not doing it anymore. And from everything I internally heard from the back end, things you guys wouldn't know about, was that they aren't going to do it again. And the funny thing is, they decided to do it one more time. And the one time they did it, they said in that post like 5 different times in that announcement post saying, hey, we're doing a balance change. They also said like 5 times there, hey, we're not doing this again. Hey, this was a one-time thing. Hey, this is exclusively for XYZ reason. And that was for Goku and Frieza. They basically gave Goku and Frieza the equivalent of Zenkaiing them on release. And they said we're not doing it again after that, by the way. So never say never, right? But I wish they would have just did that. The inherent flaw with Zenkais until they introduce Zenkai 2 is that they can't do it again. This is a bottomless well. You could just keep balance changing whatever characters you wanted. The reason why they stopped doing this, by the way, was that it wasn't cost effective to put your resources into these older characters. And that's why the next version of this becomes Zenkai, and it's super monetary, right? That is why. And that's not speculation. That's literally why. The reason why they stopped doing these is because they didn't think it was worth it from their perspective. Okay, when you say like broad words, they, their, things like that, it makes it sound like everybody was behind that. Like, I don't know, for example, how much Toshi wanted these things. Toshi's the producer, but he doesn't get the final say, right? Like, he is one of several people, for example, that has a voice, but he doesn't get to say, we're doing this and that's final, right? Anyway, but the point is, as a whole, some people there, anyway, didn't want to do that anymore. It didn't seem like it was the best usage of their resources, which I can understand. It's just weird when you have a system like this and then you hop on Dokkan, for example, and they don't have any, like, you know, potential system locking where it's like your character has to have full dupes open, as far as I know. Will they have that now? I guess with the skill orbs, I guess, but that's not really the same comparable thing. This would be like EZA, right? EZAs don't have anything like that, where it's like, you know, your characters need X number of dupes to be able to get this buff that they have, right? Like things like that. So like when you say that not only is it free on another game, but they basically pay you by giving you stones, it's just kind of weird, right? And they've in this game now found a way to do it with like the battle gauntlet, where they've made the battle gauntlet shorter now, which does mean I think there's less rewards there. They typically take rewards out of certain spots and put it in different areas, and that was going to be an honorable mention for the video, is the fact that they always do that with like modes like the old Space Time Rush and Tournament of Powers introduction, where it's like, let's get rid of that and let's add in Tournament of Power. Don't worry. We're taking your Chrono Crystals out of here because we want to make this exclusive to Zenkais, and that's fine too, but the Chrono Crystals could have just stayed. It doesn't hurt anything if you add another 1,000 or 2,000 Chrono Crystals into the economy on a monthly basis, but what do I know, right? Anyway, they said we're taking those out, we're going to put them over here. So that's like, they do that a lot. So that's kind of like my honorable mention thing about this video. But yeah, like I said, for the last time, I have no real problem with them buffing characters. That's fine. It's just, I think Zenkais, the way that they've been handled throughout their entire lifespan has been a mistake. So that's kind of it. But we've gone, it took me a while to hit the Zenkai point. We're at 27 minutes. I was, I think, at 13 when I started this. I knew this was going to have to be the last one, because I could, with the points I brought up in the video, I could just go for a while, bro. I could just go for a while, dude. What was it? Look how the posts look for the first balance sheet. They just listed it at new unique ability, SD inflicted damage up will be acquired in reaching master. Master class. Oh, that's when he's limit broken. Potential boosted. Oh my god. What was the final balance change? Was it 4? It looks like it might have been 4. This looks like the right bat. Oh man, Z ability was just purple. They added in Android here, didn't they? Doesn't he have Android on it now? Other adjustment, yeah, added Android. Dude, bring that back, dude. That's like the one thing I'm super annoyed about. Yeah, Vegeta family added there. That's the one thing I'm annoyed about, is why the hell don't Zenkais change this? The Z ability. It literally makes no sense to me. You know what it is? Is that they don't want to add more usability to these characters than they already had, because they were super damn broken on release. That's why. They didn't want to make them more useful than they already were. Some of them already had okay Z abilities, but like that Red Goku, for example, could easily have gotten a double stat Z ability. Make him strike and blast, or double attack, or strike attack, strike defense, like things like that. No, he's ranged, isn't he? I think he's ranged with a strike attack Z ability, right? Dude, Legends used to do that crap all the time. All right, guys, I'm out of here because I can keep going.